That one. How? What the? Oh, come on!
You are nothing.
Hey guys, welcome to another Broken Meeple review. Hopefully you can't hear what's going on out there because it's covering up a bit of a storm at the moment, so hopefully that sound won't carry through. Today's quite a simple one actually. I'm looking at the sequel to Unlock, aptly named Unlock 2. Well, Unlock Mystery Adventures. Depends where you look it up online actually. So, if you're not familiar with Unlock, it's a type of escape room game. Now hopefully you're familiar with those. The escape rooms are basically where you're stuck in a room and you can't get out until you solve a series of puzzles and riddles and clues in order to open up various other things within the room and then eventually let yourself out. Unlock was a type of escape room game basically done with a deck of cards. The cards symbolise different things that are happening. They've got pictures of locations, they've got the puzzles. And depending on whether you had to orientate them in certain ways, or solve puzzles, or do other things, then the idea was that some of the cards combined with other cards in order to make a number, because they were all numbered cards. You add the two numbers, you look at the card to see whether that was actually the correct answer, and if it was not, it tells you, and if it is, then you've got the next piece of the clue, or the next piece of the game, and you carry on until eventually it says you won. It's done with a companion app which pretty much dictates the time, gives you clues, gives you specific little extra bits to do with the puzzles on the phone, and eventually lets you win and then gives you a score tally, usually like a star rating out of 5 depending on how long you took, how many clues you asked for, how many penalties you got, and that's kind of my one issue I've had with the unlocks in general. I mean, I've played the first one and I enjoyed all three sets that are in it. But the penalty thing I found a little bit of an annoyance. It's the difference between this one and the exit games. I've still got the most recent 3 to play through on those. In the exit games, if you got it wrong, it just told you were wrong. You still couldn't progress, but you didn't get further penalised for it. Here, you get penalised for flicking over a penalty card. So yeah, it means that you can't just sort of gun through the deck trying to find the answer you need, but I'm not sure it was overly necessary. I mean, if you're playing this game properly, you're not going to do that anyway. And if you are cheating like that, then why are you playing this game? So, that's my one nitpick of the unlocks in general. So, with Unlock, it's basically another free adventures. You still need the companion app, it's free to download. There is a tutorial adventure in here, which I think is actually identical to the one that's in the first set. But basically, if you've never played the game before, you can pick up any of these sets and get stuck in. You do not need to have played the first Unlock to understand this one. You get free scenarios just like in the other one, and in terms of how they fare, well, I'm not going to give spoilers, but I will go through each one in turn. I will stipulate that this does say 1 to 6 players. Don't recommend you play this with too many players. There just simply isn't enough for each player to do or manipulate with the cards. 4 is the absolute max you should play this with, and even then I'm not particularly happy with 4 because you're going to have people sat there not doing a lot. 3 I think is a good sweet spot. Playing this with your significant other, 2-player, is brilliant. I played these solo and yeah, it didn't take me long to get through all 3 scenarios solo, but I thought it was great solo. Minus the fact that, and you can call this cheating if you like, but I'm standing by it. You're normally meant to start the game straight away, and all the cards are shuffled up, the numbers are all over the place, but I find it's a lot better to separate them out by numbers. Problem is, when you've got 4 of you doing that, you can cut the deck into 4 bits, and that'll do. You can get it done in no time at all. Try doing that solo. Yeah. I usually allow that you've got time to sort out the number cards before you get going. It doesn't really break the game or anything, but it's a bit unfair that you have to spend like 5 minutes sorting out the cards before you even get started. I mean, yeah, you could just ignore that and just go through, but every time you then have to search for a number, you have to go there. You know, and it's just a bit irritating. I wish they'd just put them in order to begin with. I don't see why it had to be all shuffled up nonsense-wise. In terms of replayability, once you've played through these scenarios, you can happily play through them again if you're really desperate. But the idea is that because you don't destroy any components, yes, you will know what the gist of the scenario is and you'll recognise the clues, but you could sell this on, you could give it to someone else, and they could play through it and it wouldn't matter. You know, I can do that with this one. I played through them all solo, but I can now go up to a friend's and say, hey, you want to play this with your kid and your spouse? Go ahead, 3 of you, have fun. And they can play through all 3 sets in this without any problems. I could even watch them doing it and see which ones they struggled with compared to me and which ones they managed to suss out better than I did. And it'll be interesting to watch. I did that with the first one. You know, I played that with the same group and then I showed it off to a different group and it's like, oh, okay, that was pretty amusing to see how you guys fared against it. And I'm starting to really hone in on escape rooms now. I mean, I like the exit games. I like these ones. Which ones I prefer? It's hard to tell. Both Exit and Unlock have their pros and cons, so I like them both equally, really. But I'm starting to do escape rooms in real life now. There's a centre in Portsmouth, the Escape Room Limited, I can't remember, but it had 3 actual proper escape rooms in there. Me and a group of friends have done all 3. We succeeded all 3 of them. Yeah, we didn't get the fastest time for the leaderboard, but frankly, I want to get my money's worth. You know, as long as I succeeded the mission, I don't care if I did it in 34 minutes or someone else did it in 33 minutes. You know, I don't care. Did I succeed? Did we succeed in solving it? Yes or no? Okay? Because half the time you use up in an escape room is just finding a piece that you might have misplaced or, you know, doing that sort of thing, as opposed to, oh my god, this riddle was driving me nuts. So, yeah, I'm starting to like them. I want to do more escape rooms in the future, and if we can find more areas around sort of Portsmouth and Southampton, we probably will, but I digress. So, Unlock itself. 3 new scenarios. You've got the House on the Hill, the Nautilus Traps, and the Tonopals, whatever you pronounce it as, Treasure. Now, in the first set, there was an issue some people had with the 3rd scenario, where you had to play it in groups. You know, playing it solo was not possible. You had to at least have one person, you know, on a different part of the table to the other. And ideally, you were really meant to play it with at least 4 people. This doesn't have that problem. You can play all of these solo, no problem. There is no pairing off, splitting into teams, none of that nonsense. It was a nice little gimmick, but kind of forced you to have more people, which you may not necessarily want. These 3, though, whatever player count you want to play it, you can play it. So, the House on the Hill is a straight up, haunted house scenario. You know, I'm not going to spoil, loads here. I mean, you know the generic plot, but, you know, from reading the back of the box. But basically, you know, House on Haunted Hill is just go into a haunted house, stop an evil. That's pretty much the deal. The Nautilus Traps is a bit more interesting, where you start off underwater and you're trying to outrun this beast. And you go onto a submarine, or so like a sort of submarine base, and you basically have to stay alive because you've only got so much oxygen, whilst finding a way to escape the beast. Quite a nice little story. And the 3rd one is very much more an adventure rather than an escape room. Whereas some of the escape room games feel like it's very enclosed, that one feels a lot more open. But that's as much as I'm going to say about the Tonopal Treasure one from a story perspective, because I feel you kind of expect what you get in the first 2 scenarios. 3rd one kind of surprises you, and I don't want to spoil that surprise. In terms of which of them I like the most, that 3rd one, without a shadow of a doubt. The Tonopal's Treasure is probably my favourite Unlock scenario that I have played. The puzzles were a decent level of difficulty without being frustrating or anything, and the story element and how the scenario plays out was really ingenious. I thought it did it very well for what has been the typical norm for an escape room game. I thought this one just injected some new life into it, and I hope more scenarios in the future will do the same thing. The House on Haunted Hill, they go up in scale of difficulty. So House on Haunted Hill is 1, Nautilus Traps is 2, Tonopal's Treasure is 3. The 3 and the 2 should be swapped around, and we'll get onto that later. The House on the Haunted Hill, though, is pretty easy. I mean, I didn't have much trouble with it. I think there was only 1 or 2 puzzles that I was like, You know, kind of odd. Get a couple of hints. But for the most part, you should be able to progress through House on Haunted Hill without too much difficulty. And the plot of it is pretty generic, you don't really get that engrossed into it. But the puzzles are fine, it's not too difficult, it's a nice entry point to Unlock if you've not played any Unlock games at all. Certainly the one you should start with if you're new to Unlock. To be fair, it's the one you should start with in this box anyway. The Nautilus traps. Yeah. This is where things get a thumbs down. I loved the whole setting. The fact that you were underwater, oxygen, and all that lot, and the fact that escape was different than just simply requiring a key. I found that great. Thumbs up. It is, however, the most clunkiest adventure I have had to do for Unlock to date. It's just mess. It's kind of hard to describe without giving too many spoilers, but there are some puzzles in there. Not only do a couple of them have misprints, I have discovered, but they're based on really obscure knowledge. Yeah, there's a lot of orientation style puzzles in this, but they don't give you any hint of a clue as to how you're supposed to arrange anything. So you find yourself just aimlessly moving stuff around with no rhyme or reason as to why you're doing it. And some of them don't even make that much sense as to why it would be like that when you start off. It's just kind of weird. But there's one puzzle in there. It was based on wordplay. And I kid you not, the word, you can sort of figure it out by process of elimination, or you can have a guess, but it's wordplay, and one of the words, if you know what this word means, then fair play to you. You have a much larger vocab than most of the human race. But I had to Google it, and I'd never heard of the word before. Ever. This is a really obscure word. Granted, I'm sure some of you are going to go, oh no, I use that in speech all the time, common. But I'd never heard of it. And so it made that puzzle really frustrating because not knowing the word kind of scuppers you in it. But I just thought, who wrote that puzzle and thought people knew that word? It just seemed really odd. You'll come across it pretty quickly, so at least you'll get it out of the way. But yeah, it just felt very clunky. A lot of the stuff is kind of not obvious as to where it is. Things linked to all sorts of places. The orientation puzzles aren't very clear as to what you're supposed to do or line up what with what. And I found the story fine, but I found it very frustrating. I had to ask for a lot of hints because I'm just like, where exactly are you expecting me to look here? This doesn't make sense. And it was just very clunky. I am not alone in this thought process. If you go online and look on BGG and the various other forums to do this game, a lot of people agree they don't like the Nautilus traps. There's a lot of, not hate, but there's a lot of that wasn't as good. I'm still glad I tried it, but yeah, that could have done with a lot of improvements. And the fact that it's the most prominent thing you see on the cover is like, oh, come on, I wanted that adventure to at least be the good one. And it did start off with such promise. And then it just got clunkier and clunkier, and I could hear the gears turning. It just got a little bit out of hand. Now the third one, Tunnible's Treasure. Fantastic. I am not going to give away the story and how it sort of plays because I feel that will do disservice to this scenario. But what you expect from an escape room, this turns it on its head. This throws it, gives you a different feel, and it works brilliantly. It feels much more open, much more epic. And as a result, it is definitely my favourite scenario I have played to date. Because the second scenario is more clunky, I felt that the difficulty could have been switched. I felt that this one was more of a difficulty 2, and the other one was a difficulty 3. But it was still pretty challenging. There were some challenging riddles in here, and I liked the way that some of the stuff worked. So, it was pretty good in that respect. My only problem, and I think that's why this gets a difficulty of 3, is that like in, I think, the last scenario in the first set, some of it requires sound clips from the app. And it's not very clear. You're listening to it going, what the hell is that saying? You can barely tell. You can barely make it out. And that frustrates me. I'd rather just get it in text form. Because if I don't understand the clue from the text, then fair enough, the puzzle was difficult. But I don't want the puzzle to be difficult just because I can't decipher the sound. Or because the speech is so jumbled that it doesn't make sense. It's an actual sentence, but because it's so garbled, you can't really tell what it is it's meant to be. And that doesn't feel like I can't solve the puzzle because it's I don't have the knowledge for this. No, I can't solve the puzzle because I don't understand the words that have been spoken to me. It's like basically going, here's a nice simple puzzle for you, but it's all written in German. It could literally be as simple as 3 plus 3 equals what? But if it's written in German, am I going to know it? It's that kind of thing. Actually, I know what that is in German, but, Japanese. We'll go with that. And, yeah, that was a little bit frustrating, but not enough to spoil the scenario. I thought that it was still really solid. So, 2 out of 3. Nautilus Traps is not terrible, but it's still clunky and it's a bit of a letdown. The first one is fine, nice and straightforward, nice entry level, decent scenario, 1 or 2 frustrating puzzles, but nothing too bad, and maybe other people will find them easier than I will. The Tunnelball's Treasure made up for any negatives that I had with the other scenarios because it was just that good. I really, really like the Tunnelballs one, and at first I think my favourite one from the first set was the Scientist one. I really quite like, the Mad Scientist one, Supervillain. I really quite like that one, and I'm glad that the next set is going to kind of have a sequel to that one. That should be quite cool. But Tunnelball's Treasure takes it. So, overall, I still enjoy these games. I think Unlock is a great system for escape room games. If you are a fan of escape room games, you should definitely check these out. I like the Exit games as well, and I think I've reviewed one of them before, and they're pretty much the same, whichever ones you play. But it just depends what you want. Do you want the card system where you could give it to other people and they could play through it? And you like that whole combine this card with this card to do stuff? Or do you prefer the ones that have destructible components, are able to go a little bit further with the types of puzzles they use, but accept that it's a one use only no matter what affair? Really just depends on what you fancy. Certainly from a component perspective, that one, the Exits have more in the way of components because these are literally just a deck of cards. But in terms of artwork, Unlock without a shadow of a doubt. The artwork in this is stellar. It's really nice stuff. And, it's fairly well priced as well. You're getting a good minimum 3 hours of gameplay, really, because you're probably going to be close to that hour before you finish the scenario. And some of you might go over. So you're talking about 3 hours worth of play for your buck. Is that too expensive for you? That's down to you. You know what escape rooms are like. They're a little bit costly, but they give you a solid amount of engagement for that time period. The real life ones are really expensive, but you're thinking, you're on the go, you're never bored. And that's one thing that these unlocks do well. You're not bored for the time you're playing it for. You're just not going to be playing it for that long. That's up to you, really. But at least you could give this to someone else. You could sell it on, get your money back. You could split the price between you and your friends that you're going to play it with, and at which point it becomes no more expensive than a typical escape room for you. So overall, like I say, first scenario, pretty good. Third scenario, brilliant. Second one, bit of a letdown. On the personal level, that kind of averages out to about an 8, I would give this. An 8 out of 10 for a personal rating. It's solid, I enjoy them, and I can't wait for the third set. So, that's it for me on this one. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel, and even if you fail and get shut up in the room and locked for all eternity, still only a game, so don't fret about it. Alright, see you guys on the next review.